Good evening, Papua New Guinea, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Business PNG for the year 2015. Financial literacy and access to financial information are said to be two of the main challenges affecting many local business operators in Papua New Guinea. While our culture demands us to spend money during bride price, death compensation, or other community obligations, it is fairly important we keep some of that money to look after ourselves. This is where financial literacy comes in. Having access to the right financial advice and understanding when and how much to spend given the different community obligations we have, one can successfully achieve these financial obligations. This segment is focused on the Bank of Papua New Guinea's strive to educate 120,000 Papua New Guineans on basic financial education come 2017.
More Papua New Guineans are receiving basic financial education on savings and budgeting skills through the joint partnership program between the state, the Australian government, and the Asian Development Bank. The microfinance expansion program has already reached over 8,300 people in the Highlands region. From these, almost half are women. An additional 5,000 men, women and students graduated from the program over the weekend in Mount Hagen, Western Islands, with small business plans they are eager to achieve.
Government sponsor this project. Government looks at this heavy emicat. Over 80% of our people live in the rural areas. Maybe higher proportion are illiterate. Only knows how to read and write. Big challenge threat. So, Amy looks away long. There's a heavy stable on the Mibla. Long kissing this process blow economic development, how by trickle down go involving more man, Mary Law place. So that's the whole idea. Now, government yet looks away and come up in Vision 2050.
The financial inclusion program openly targets the adult rural Papua New Guineans, but students or children are encouraged to take up the training because what is taught is basic financial literacy. For a growing economy like Papua New Guinea, it is of paramount importance that the people targeted in the microfinance expansion program understand what financial literacy is. Thus, a simple definition for financial literacy is the understanding of saving money for later use and being financially stable. This means making financial decisions that will benefit oneself. Most of these men and women who participated in the MEP program are locals who have zero financial background but are heavily involved in the informal sector. Some are involved in cash crops and vegetable production, while others are engaged in livestock farming. In the course of their training, many said they have come to realize the importance of developing a savings culture and budgeting their monies, no matter how small it could be. Josephine Penna is senior Tethys and is a local coffee grower. She is one of the 400 participants from Kinjimbin Pramdaka Association in Hagen Central. She says with the understanding she has acquired, she can now easily identify when there is a need to spend and when not to.
Training go through saving planning coffee money. So mibla no sa mani mibla go through long and now mibla sim disla school na mibla ya mastro. Osem weblo stable good life mibla no saving but now disla train la ni mibla na.
Regina Kay, a student also from Hagen Central, is a participant from the Kumapana Association. After completing the MEP training, she will be putting to practice what she has learned.
Now I'm school strong milo. Bami isumani blomi wisely. Pastem misa isumani necessarily so now bami katim down on sample rate ni isum wisely.
MEP is a national government project facilitated through the Bank of Papua New Guinea and other financial partners. It has given birth to a number of financial institutions in the country, like the National Development Bank and the People's Microfinance Limited.
Number two, phase this project and maybe like expanding the work microfinance institutions in that country. Now we are looking at 5 licensed microfinance institutions up inside of this country. Nationwide microbank that's all, or my bank.
Its aim is to educate and empower people in rural communities to practice a savings culture, manage their finances, start up a new business, or expand on their existing business. Since its commencement in 2013, the project received a funding support from the Australian government valuing over $24 million. It has 6 basic outputs that the National Bank aims to achieve come 2017.
One plan block training and working capacity building inside of microfinance institutions. Now inside of this contract, people work on the planning partners law and then this law. Some foreign partners, some local partners. Now inside of this people have been targeting 2,000 man days block training online inside law capacity building law. How all microfinance institution by work because plenty of microfinance institution too work law fail.
In the Highlands region, MEP is targeting 60 to 80,000 people. It has partnered with a number of contractors like K1 and People's Action for Development in delivering this massive project.
Original project agreement, we got on them Asian Development Bank, development partners, employ training 120,000 people of financial education inside Papua New Guinea.
So far, over 40,000 people in the Western Islands, Simbu, Jiwaka, Enga, and Southern Islands provinces have completed the training and have opened bank accounts. Since establishing its Mount Hagen branch, the People's Microbank Limited recorded an estimated 4,000 customers who opened their accounts with the bank through MEP.
2 savings accounts in which you can open. One is the personal savings and one is the visa.
Julie Penna is the PML's assistant branch manager. She explained that though Papua New Guineans are capable of making money, many lack the ability to save some for rainy days. Thus, PML shares the same vision BPNG has in educating people on savings and budgeting.
In Papua New Guinea, we know how to make money, but we don't know how to save it and use it at a time that we really need to use the money. Because of that, we have this promotion where we promote a savings culture in PNG.
But while the locals welcome the microfinance expansion program with business dreams they hope to achieve, MEP has again highlighted the high illiteracy rate in our rural communities. Pastor Joseph Pate is the team leader of the Kinjimbini Pramdaka Association. He said a number of people in his community were educated on the different banking services only recently. The program has also aware the people on how to apply for loans and the correct procedures one must follow to use the different bank products.
Only be running this for training. Okay, time start we training we looking also plenty all no read no write no plenty all no clear long how long banking money how long all services long all bank low Western Islands all plenty all service long bank game stop but plenty all no clear yet. Now time Kewani winning this contract name giving me like Kinsa Branda Community Association long subcontract long me na time me running this training now me looking also plenty only clear long how long look out the money long family long individual life long all one long all but seven must stop long hand.
Alex Panda, another MEP participant, is grateful for the program. He never dreamt of owning a bank account, but said the training is a self-achievement for him.
Sample man also karim only karim sample cut number the round line and everything as sample big man or kind of say number. But mimi lugi me mo sa mimi one kan man but yumi si simol mani blum mibla nothing osem na mibla sa fail sem stop on the mibla. Osem so na good blum mo sa mimi one kan yumi ba obi account blum mibla. So mimi kata amas bibla amas lo sa mi yer amas lo obi account blum mina. So at least mi only one card blum stop and bigla something so.
At the MEP graduation, representative from the Foreign Aid and Trade, Simon Ross, stressed that while PNG is a land of opportunities, these opportunities can be turned into reality if the people put to practice the knowledge they learn.
Programs like this one will create the foundations for people to save money, and for PNG businesses to contribute to the country's growth. As has been stated, this program has a big finance on women's financial literacy as well. And the Australian government is focused on empowering women in PNG.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Papua New Guinea is planning on including the financial education in school curriculum in the country, so students will be educated on basic savings and budgeting skills at an early age.
Coming up on the show, another edition of the OBG Corner with Marco Venditti. In this edition of the OBG Corner, editorial manager of the PNG report, Mark Venditti, speaks to outgoing European Union Ambassador Martin Dim.
Good evening and welcome back to Oxford Business Group Corner, OBG Corner. Tonight our guest is Martin Dim, the European Ambassador to Papua New Guinea. Martin has been in Papua New Guinea for 4 years, so we're very interested to hear his experience. Beside the traditional role of the European Union to implement trade, political cooperation and development aid, one of the main tasks for Martin has been to bridge the gap between two very distant parts of the world, but perhaps not that distant, and this is what we're going to find out tonight. Martin, thank you very much for coming to the show. I wanted to say just something to start this conversation. Once you go out at night in Port Moresby, as well as other cities in Papua New Guinea, it's not very uncommon to sit down on a table and seeing 4 or 5 different nationalities. And nowadays we're seeing a lot of Europeans, we hear a lot of European languages. So maybe the distance between these two parts of the world is sort of bridging, would you say?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thank you. Marco, for that. It's interesting to see that in Papua New Guinea, often people tell me we are so far away from Europe, and in fact in Europe people tell me we are so far away from Papua New Guinea, but then when it comes to reality, here in Port Moresby you discover a large European community, basically, be it business persons that have been here for many, many years, already in the 3rd or 2nd generation, and also persons that have come more recently to the country to do business or to do research also. And overall, I went to many meetings here and I suddenly discovered, wait a moment, this is all European, or a lot of it is European. So the links are very strong in a way, despite the geographical distance. But there's also the historical linkage, of course. There's a historical linkage with the United Kingdom. I mean, in fact, the head of state of Papua New Guinea is the same head of state as of a European Union member state, which is the United Kingdom, which is a Queen of England. And we have also the German history, and more in the northern part of the country. And if I go to Rabaul, I'm often addressed on this one. I'm asked about the past of the country and what I know about it. I see the photos, I see Rabaul. So there's a lot of linkages, I think, between Europe and Papua New Guinea.
Very good. So what would you say the European Union has been achieved so far, especially under your umbrella? What do you think you have achieved as an ambassador here for 4 years?
I want to be modest. There's always that you can achieve more, of course. But clear is that we have changed, I think, dramatically our relationship over the last 3-4 years. Partly because we in Europe, we have established a new service, which is the foreign service of the European Union, so to speak. We have created a foreign department for foreign affairs, basically, which is called the European External Action Service, based in Brussels. I'm an official of this new service, and when I came here for the first time, I was representing the European Union for political matters, for foreign policy matters. So that starts with normal exchanges about human rights, for example, or alliance building in the United Nations in New York. We have more recently also started talking about, for example, visa-free travel between the two countries or entities, and we have also had many more discussions about security politics in the world, and simply finding out what our partner thinks and then seeing whether we have a possibility to align ideas and work jointly also in international fora. One important example might also be in the close future the climate change discussions.
Yes.
We have a big conference coming up in Paris
yes.
in December of this year. We do hope that out of this conference comes an ambitious agreement which will help the world to contain the temperature increase and contain climate change, which is in the interest, obviously, of Papua New Guinea, but also very much in our own interest in Europe. So we are working very much on all sorts of things in this political dialogue area. And then you already mentioned earlier, we have built a second strong pillar over recent years, which is trade
yes.
and investment.
But before we go to trade, let's talk about climate change, because the Pope has just met Mr. Ban Ki-moon in Rome, and very soon he will actually travel to Washington to address the American Congress about climate change. So it seems that this issue, for once, is becoming a global issue. Even though it is a global issue, countries tend to think independently. Do you think that the moment has arrived, really, that an effort has to be made by pretty much everybody on this issue, because climate change is not an opinion anymore, is a fact, and it will affect country as PNG much more than others in Europe or perhaps the United States?
Well, the difficult thing about climate change perhaps is that nobody knows exactly who will affect it how. But we all do know that if we go into this risk zone of having a temperature increase that spirals out of control, it has risks for all of us, and it has risks also for stability, it has risk for security, it has risk for migration flows. It is endless, the issues that stand behind such a uncontrolled increase of temperature. So I think we all, and I said this, either the European Union, United States, Papua New Guinea, or whoever in the world, we all have a same very strong interest in containing this. And we all know we can only do it together. So whatever we do in Europe is useless if it's not embedded in an overall package of what everybody else does. So we have gone forward, we have made already our own commitments on containing emission of
yes.
greenhouse gases practically on our own, but it doesn't help. We need everybody on board, and everybody can contribute in this context. And in Papua New Guinea, of course, for example, we could speak about forestry. Papua New Guinea offers a service to the world by having this great forest, which is still there. We hear that there's an 80% coverage of the landmass of Papua New Guinea by primary rainforest, and it's the third largest in the world as far as I know, so it's a big factor. How to protect that in future?
But there is always that sort of
important issue.
There is a resistance, though, from developing nations or from emerging nations, and the argument is always the same. They're saying, you first world have done the damage that everybody is suffering for today, now you're asking us to make that sacrifice. So how do you respond to that from your point of view as an ambassador when you hear that argument?
Well, let me jump into a position of a Papua New Guinean. If I was here, I would say, the forest is an asset for my country. So we can of course preserve this asset for the country independently of what anybody else says in the world, because it's our forest it's customary land, we benefit from it. We benefit in many, many different aspects, from food, from shelter, from building materials, from log exports, whatever. And we should keep it. So that is a purely national, egoistic point of view. But we can also take the European egoistic point of view, which is we would be very interested if Papua New Guinea keeps the forest. So that's why we are coming here also with aid money and why we are trying to support, in fact, conservation and sustainable management of the forestry resources in Papua New Guinea.
What about some of the legislation that we have implemented in Europe? Like I'm thinking about trading, for instance, emission. This is something that could be also implemented in this part of the world.
Helpful, indeed.
You want to spare some words about that? Yeah.
No, yeah, that's exactly the next point of importance there. We have just recently launched a project with the Minister for Forest that seeks to establish a multi-purpose inventory of the forestry in Papua New Guinea. So you don't count the trees, but you know where they are,
right,
and what quantity of carbon dioxide they have stored and what the biological diversity around them is. And you have all that in a big inventory, and then you can go the next step to say, how can we put this asset into an international scheme where there is, I don't think it's called compensation, but where there is financial flow in order to keep the situation as it is. So we are very much supporting this idea. However, we have to accept that this is also a complicated idea, and it is a medium to longer term idea. So even the short term, I think, is in all of our interest if each of us in the world, each country does what is possible, and then in the medium to longer term sees what comes out of Paris, hopefully a very ambitious agreement, and then lives up to the expectations and to the opportunities that are in this agreement. And let me say one further point, perhaps very concretely to announce. Since we put so much emphasis on climate change as European Union, we believe very much in the importance of preserving the environment and containing climate change. We will be sending our climate change commissioner to Port Moresby, in fact. So he will come for a visit in September on the occasion of the Pacific Island Forum Summit, which will hold here on the 7th of September.
Well, obviously a lot of people are having great hope for this Paris meeting coming up in December 2014, but nobody actually has forgotten the failures of Copenhagen. So why would this will be any different this time? I mean,
well, you know, international processes are longer processes. We know this. Copenhagen was labeled by some as a failure. Others still found useful elements that came out of Copenhagen. I personally would say these conferences are absolutely needed under the current situation, and any progress we can make each time we meet is a good progress, and we have to do more. It's true.
Something is better than nothing, essentially, on this issue. Let's go back on trading. Trade, obviously, it's one of the big item on your agenda. And if we look at the history of the European Union, I think trading, internal trading, is really what has, in a way, provided us 40, 50 years of peaceful environment, in a way, in Europe after the post-war drama that we all have lived somehow, even maybe through our parents. So what would you say trade could do for this part of the world?
Yeah, thanks for pointing your finger on the European Union as a peace project. That's what we were, or still are in a way, but we were that in the beginning, certainly after World War II. This year on the 8th of May, we celebrate Europe Day, which means basically 70 years of peace and prosperity development in Europe. It's a great achievement, and that we have done through several mechanisms we have built into our union. One of this is the single market, which means we tear down all the borderlines. We have completely free circulation of goods, services, capital, and people within the European Union. And then we have reached out, as you rightly say, to others to say this trade idea is an interesting idea. The more we are interlinked, the less we think we should battle against each other, because we have so much interest in each other. And that is quite an idea that has made a lot of career also through the World Trade Organization in a way. But here with Papua New Guinea, we offered in 2004, so some 11 years ago, to enter into trade negotiations. And in fact, we offered it to the whole of Africa, the Pacific, and the Caribbean. And Papua New Guinea was at the forefront really of taking this up, taking up this offer and running with it, like in the baseball field. You know, you grab the ball and you run towards. Exactly, you try to score. Okay. And Papua New Guinea was quite successful in scoring, to the extent that we were even a bit surprised how successful they were to scoring against us or with us in a trade agreement. And in 2009 we signed up. I remember this very well because I was involved in these negotiations. So it was a very tumultuous night, and it went till 11 o'clock, and we had a lot of whiskey in the end. But there was a trade agreement coming out of it, a bilateral trade agreement between Papua New Guinea and the European Union, which I still think today was quite a spectacular achievement, because many other partners of us were rather doubtful and hesitant. We had, and we still have today, also from some non-governmental organizations, lots of criticism and resistance against this idea of concluding trade agreements. But Papua New Guinea felt differently, so they went forward and did it. And it was then ratified in 2011 here and also on our side with the European Parliament. And so it's fully applicable. To my knowledge, there are only 2 other trade agreements in the whole Asia-Pacific region fully applicable, which is with Korea, South Korea, and with Singapore now. But the third one is with Papua New Guinea. And the country then also followed up, and you see a lot of investment nowadays, particularly in fish processing, based on this agreement, which gives a solid ground for access to the European market, which is the largest in the world, after all, with its 500 million consumers. And fish is, of course, a product that's very much looked after in Europe, so research wanted. So Papua New Guinea did draw a lot of benefits in terms of jobs and value added out of this agreement. And we are very pleased because it was meant to help with development, basically. And nowadays we also speak together jointly about how to ensure that the fishery stocks are sustainable for the future, so not just exploited because of trade agreement and everything is gone. So this is an ongoing discussion which will be hopefully concluded very soon. And we also talk about how better to link this whole huge agricultural sector up with market access, so that more is exported and more is processed even before export. And that's, of course, also then a discussion you have more and more in the forestry sector, where currently a lot of raw materials around logs are exported. But in future, there's a possibility, opportunity for Papua New Guinea to export much more processed wood, processed logs.
So would you say the future of Papua New Guinea is not so much in the extracting industries, it's much more into manufacturing perhaps, or agriculture, or downstreaming? Where would you say is the future of Papua New Guinea?
The future of Papua New Guinea is certainly with the
economically speaking, obviously,
with a measured and possibly cautious and gradual approach. I think it's always dangerous to be catapulted into a completely new situation too fast, because the whole society and population has to be taken with this development. So I think that is great here, because it is a very strong society. What you have here, a society that knows its right. We have a lot of customary landowners, and I personally think it's also an advantage. It's not a disadvantage, because
why is that?
It puts natural brakes perhaps on developments that otherwise would run very, very fast, and maybe too fast. So that the basis is very good. And the future, of course, will have also to consider what we have already now, oil and gas and minerals. Which are there, which are a great asset and can be exploited, and also natural resources and even raw materials. But the future will also be to go a step further and build on all of these assets which are here in a very rich measure in Papua New Guinea, and to try get more benefits out for the country itself before everything is exported. And that, I think, has been happening in many, many economies around the world. And I'm very confident it will also happen here, and maybe the fish processing and increasingly the agricultural processing is a first indication of that.
Thank you very much for watching the show. Stay tuned for the next episode of Oxford Business Group. We will bring new guests for our discussion on Papua New Guinea current affairs, business and economy. Thank you so much.
And that's all we have for you tonight. For more business news, if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit MTV online at www.mtv.com.pg, or to join the conversation, like our page on Facebook for daily business news, or follow us on Twitter at Business PNG using the hashtag Business PNG. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Leanne Jarari, and this is Business PNG.